All right, guys. So I just wanted to talk about some of the key points that I would give, the key suggestions to optimize your health. All right. So as you know, I believe that in the early 1900s, they started to introduce those seed oils, the canola, sunflower, and whatnot. These were new. These are different from the traditional cold press oils, coconut in the tropics, avocado, olive oil that's been used since antiquity. We have to realize that these are simple cold press techniques that collect the oil from a naturally oily source. The seed oils are not the same. These are not naturally oily. They need a solvent to extract, as I've said many times in some of my videos. Go check some of the toxic vegetable oil videos. How to avoid it, what it is, and how to fix your omega-6 to 3 ratio. A big cause of our toxicity, our overdosing of omega-6 is because of the seed oils. So they were introduced in the 1900s. I don't think it was a big bad conspiracy. It was economical gain. That was the motivation. So a company that was using cottonseed to make oil for lubrication of industrial lubricants, as well as soap. So Procter & Gamble was one of the first companies. They were using cottonseed, and they wanted, look, they had to probably pay to get rid of this stuff, so they wanted to find a way to make money. So it's not like some big conspiracy agenda. It was economically based. The research on it before introducing it was nil. So they just decided, hey, let's start eating plant fats. You have to realize we'd never be able to get such a large quantity of fats, and why would we be chomping on fields and fields of soybean or sunflower or rapeseed, which is canola? So when they started introducing that, we started getting sick, right? And then after they heart attack rates and stuff peaked in the 1950s. They didn't realize that it was due to cigarette smoking, and also due to the oxidized rancidity and high omega-6 content of the seed oils that causes inflammation, oxidation, cellular damage, and modern diseases. So they wanted to put it, right, this product in everything. So not only did they demonize the animal fats with food surveys, epidemiological studies, observational studies that can't really prove cause and shouldn't be changing policies, especially something so ancient as animal food and animal fat and whatnot. So when that was introduced, I mean, think of it. This is a huge change in the human food chain. We were getting animal fat, the saturated, the mono, the omega-6, the omega-3. We're getting all of that within animal sources of nutrition. If we were going towards the water animals, the fish and whatnot, you were getting a lot more omega-3. So it was a wonderful blend. Also, animal foods you can't overconsume. They're very satiating. There's hormones that tell us to stop eating. So it was a regulatory system that allowed us never to go too much with our omega-3s and 6s. But that is no longer the case. Everything in the middle section that requires fat is going to be one of the seed oils. So my first thing that I've learned, and the biggest recommendation I can give you for changing your health, we know the obvious: avoid sugar, avoid junk food, avoid processed food. But we often don't consider macaroni, pastas, and many of the things that are staples in a lot of our diets as processed. Look, spaghetti noodles don't grow on trees outside in the wilderness. They're processed. They're refined. There's not a big difference between the brown whole grains and the processed. In fact, if you have the brown one, there's probably more antinutrients and oxalates and lectins and whatnot. And if you have the processed, there's probably nothing left. And no anti-nutrients and no nutrients. So they have to be fortified. So the first thing is, I suggest that you avoid, like the plague, the seed oils, which means that you're going to pretty much not shop anymore in the middle section, right down to brown bread. Brown bread has canola. Every one of those wraps, tortilla wraps, condiments, sauces, crackers, crispers, Triscuits, all of these have these seed oils in them. So when I tell people don't use seed oils, they'll often say, well, I don't cook with seed oils. I cook with whatever, olive oil or something. But what I try to explain to them, it's not only about cooking or having that big canola oil or vegetable oil blend in your pantry. It's about all the other things that you're consuming, and you're looking at avoiding saturated fat. You have no clue how much omega-6 that you're consuming. And do people really eat that much cod liver, anymore? Sardines? Is the food quality up to par? Are the fish as high as they used to be in omega-3 since they're farmed? Who knows? I don't know. All I'm saying is that it's harder and harder to get good quality of foods. It's harder and harder even for carnivores or omnivores that eat animal products to correct that omega-6 to 3 ratio. You can't correct your omega-3 to 6 to 3 ratio by increasing your omega-3 consumption. It's by bringing down the omega-6, and that is by looking on every single label and seeing that it's there and not eating it. So the avoidance of seed oil is the first thing that will have a dramatic impact on your health, a good impact on your health. Not fearing animal fats and cholesterol and animal proteins, doing a bit of the research to understand that the protein in animal products is far superior. The amino acid profile with those essential amino acids are all there, present in great ratios, because animal flesh is very similar to human flesh. We're beasts as far as the vehicle that we have in this lifetime is fleshy. So it's better when you eat flesh than plant. Plant's a different operating system. That's what Paul Saladino coined it. It's a different operating system. We have hormones. Well, you know what? Plants have hormones, phytoestrogens and whatnot. And when we ingest these hormones, it's not compatible with us, and it's not something essential that we have to consume. So it causes issues. So after the seed oil, it's basically go back to animal-based nutrition. Be proud. Don't fall for the hype of having to say plant-based. Even people that did the keto diet would say, yeah, but it's plant-based. Like there's a good foundation of plants. It's not full of animal products and stuff like that. I toted it the same way. I was proud of my greens until I realized that it's full of antinutrients, it's full of phytic acids, full of oxalates, full of antinutrients, full of hormone disruptors, full of phytoestrogens. And I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. Carbohydrates are not essential, yet they want us to consume 60% of our nutrients as carbohydrates, meaning if it's not essential, we don't need it. So why are we consuming so much of it? Coincidence? Subsidized. So they pulled out the fat, they added the sugar, and the little fat that they added is not animal fat. So they're making money on us with the sugar industry as well as the seed oil industry, right? So butter became margarine, lard became Crisco, everything became a plant-based version. These nut butters, sounds healthy, not healthy at all, okay? So the second thing that I would implement, we have the avoidance of the seed oils. Now we're gonna go for the correction of our omega-6 to 3 ratios. I just said we avoid the processed food. We look at the labels. When we see the omega-6 seed oils, we avoid it, okay? And that is whole food, because if there's a package with ingredients, it's not considered whole food, right? So the avoidance of the omega-6, the avoidance of the seed oils, and going after omega-3 rich foods, which happen to all be animal sources of nutrition, the DHA, the EPA, understanding that our brain is 60% fat, 50% of that 60% fat is saturated fat. We've got 25% cholesterol up there. Every cell has a lipid, a fat layer that allows permeability. What fat we are eating is what fat will be there in the cell. To have too much omega-6, because we're avoiding all of the animal fats, you're building primarily with omega-6. It's oxidized, it causes inflammation, and if this is the lipid layer around your cells, you have issues. You have an inflamed cell producing a lot of garbage, probably creating some kind of resistance to things that are supposed to be passing through. So going after sardines, going after good quality eggs, possibly the omega-3 enriched eggs, going after cod liver. If we look at what our great-grandparents were consuming, there was cod liver, at least cod liver oil. It's an important organ. People often ate liver. I hate liver. I tried it. Maybe not beef liver. Maybe I should try a different kind of liver. But if you like it, then introduce organ meats. These are the superfoods. They put vegetables to shame when you look at the nutrient content. Fresh meat has vitamin C. Okay, vitamin C and glucose are very similar looking. So they compete for entry into the cell. Therefore, a high carb diet requires high vitamin C intake. A human appropriate diet, consuming mostly animal sources of nutrition, is a low carb diet. And because there's no more competition, you need less vitamin C. We know that when you're doing a low carb diet, we tend to retain less sodium, and that's a good thing too. Don't forget, the hypertension is not directly caused by sodium. It's caused by inflammation, and the inflammation is caused by the seed oils. High glucose, high oxidative stress. Inflammation is what causes hypertension. But fluid does get retained with higher sodium. So therefore, if you have a vessel that's inflamed and it's narrowing, the pressure is going to go up inside there. You're squeezing the same amount of fluid in a pipe and you're making it narrow, pressure goes up. No, of course. And if you're eating a lot of salt with a high carb diet, then you're going to retain also fluid, which keeps more fluid in your vessel, and the hypertension goes up. But it's an association. If you remove the inflammatory factors, the seed oils, the high glucose, the high insulin levels, the inflammation goes down. And this occurs with a low carb diet. It produces less oxidative stress, and you're able to use salt to your liking. So everything's kind of wrong and backwards, and everything seems to fix itself once we go on a more animal-based low-carb diet. Keep in mind, guys, that the reason they call it low-fat is because at one point it was a higher-fat diet. Okay, so talking about these fads and stuff like that, if you go back to the Banting diet, if you go back to nutrition, early on nutritional journals, all nutritionists are like, obviously, starchy foods and sugars make you fat. All women know that. And all of a sudden now it's like, it's about calories. Calorie is a calorie is a calorie. If you consume 2,000 calories of sugar as a, compared to 2,000 calories of some fat and meat from animal, same darn thing. You're going to put the same weight, not looking that different macronutrients have different purposes. Proteins for building blocks. Carbs can be used as fuel, but they're not essential. And fat is a building block hormonally, structurally, as well as a fuel. Yet we're supposed to be sucking down empty calories, not being educated on what exactly calorie is, why we need it, and that it offers no nutrition. Okay, there's a difference between energy, okay, glucose or fat for energy, and the introducing food for the essential vitamins, the essential proteins and whatnot. So avoid seed oils. Now I want you to correct your omega-6 to 3 ratios, add omega-3 animal-rich foods, okay? I consume salmon roe, cod liver, sardines, eggs, and an understanding that my 6 to 3 ratio is being accomplished totally with animal foods. I can't put it out of whack. I literally cannot eat enough animal food to create the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio that is totally screwed up when we're dealing with the polyunsaturated seeds, the seed fats, the plant fats. So what about grains and stuff like that? I I'm not extreme. I'm not saying don't consume any fruits, don't consume any vegetables. Wheat is the devil. But we do have to understand that the fruits and the vegetables, as well as the wheat, are genetically modified. They don't look at all like they used to, okay? Go look up what ancient food, ancient plants, ancient corn, whatnot looks like. They're highly fibrous. There is a lot less sugar within them. And primarily that was the sugar source, right, of early man, was some vegetation, some plants, as well as dairy. So what else? Omega-6 to 3, we've dealt with that. You can't fix it by increasing your omega-3. You have to find out how to reduce it. I just told you how to do that, and then purposely go after the omega-3. The greatest cause, in my opinion, of modern diseases is the omega-6 ratio that is off, the oxidizing seed oils that are everywhere, that we're just saturated with, the avoidance of what we need to be optimal, what is the most bioavailable, which is essential, the animal foods, the demonization of these fats have caused the polyunsaturated seed oils to cause heart disease. These are easily oxidized oils on the shelf as well during the refinement process. Therefore, like I said, if we are feeding things that are essential, that we need, but we're only feeding a massive amount of omega-6, your body will have no choice but to use these. Therefore, the fat under your skin is, if it's high omega-6 consumption, the fat under the skin, if it's omega-6 from seed oils, the sun will hit that skin and oxidize, because now that fat's vulnerable to heat and light. Therefore, a high omega-6 seed oil diet will cause an oxidizing and inflammatory process in the skin, sunburns, frequent sunburns, an inability to go out in the sun to acquire the vitamin D3, because now we're scared of the sun. So do you understand that everything that is essential, okay, everything that humans were doing naturally before civilization, eating animal products, out in the sun, being exposed in the sun with no sunscreen, getting the vitamin D3, which, by the way, the sun creates vitamin D3 through cholesterol. Yeah, you need cholesterol, and the sun converts it to D3. Yeah, well, there's no D3 in the plant kingdom, only D2, and D3 is what's necessary. What else? So, if you're gonna eat plants, if you're gonna eat beans, if you're gonna eat legumes, I suggest you go to the Weston Price Foundation, as well as maybe looking at videos with Sally Fallon. They will show you, if you do want to eat beans, legumes, as well as grains and whatnot, they'll show you how to process it, to deactivate these anti-nutrients, to allow an easier absorption of this difficult to absorb food. Don't forget, like, legumes are seeds, right? They're supposed to sprout and create the next generation of the plant. They're supposed to go in the ground, and they have a tendency to suck into itself the vitamins and the minerals and what's required, so that when that plant germinates, you know, it creates the next offspring. But we're eating that. It's not designed. The plant is not happy that you're eating that, and that seed is a very important aspect of the plant, and it has defense mechanisms. So if you're gonna go after that, realize that the ancient grains, okay, are not the same as what we're eating now. Been modified, and that creates issues the minute we play with nature. The original plants, vegetables and stuff like that are not what we're eating now. There's a lot of stuff like broccoli and cauliflower that didn't even exist. They come from other ancient plants. So to tote that this is, you know, just wonderful, and there's nothing possibly, you know, bad with plants, is ridiculous. And it just shows that we've been repeated a lie over and over. I live in Canada, okay? Before we were able to ship food all across the world, we'd be eating seasonally, okay? And whatever I didn't put in a mason jar to preserve over the winter, I would be eating animal sources of nutrition. It's winter, vegetation's not available, it's in season. Therefore, why are you being convinced that if you eat animal food, where humans have been isolated from the ability to get any plant foods, all societies have consumed animal foods and red meats and stuff like that. This idea that Asians only eat rice and Vietnamese only eat rice. Japan is a large meat consumer, but we get these ideas here in the West that over there they just eat rice, okay? And how about like, oh, you know, everyone from India is a vegan? No, they're not. Okay, they consume ghee, they consume butter, they consume dairy, they eat a crap load of chicken. They're vegetarian, and only 45% of India is vegetarian, and they're not the most healthy population. So, you know, so now we understand that the plant-based agenda is not about encouraging us to have more side dishes of vegetable, which is great. I much rather you have side dishes of Brussels sprouts and healthy greens, okay, than to have pasta, than to have some side dish that is even higher in glycemic index, spikes insulin the most. What else? Bone broth. Actually, that's what I got here. Okay, and I just poured it on the ground. Good job. So I make my own bone broth. Very simple. Grab the bone marrow, the marrow bones. I put it in the oven for 375 times 30 minutes to grill them. Makes it taste better. Doesn't taste good if you don't grill the bones. And I throw it in a slow cooker, add water, and that's it. I put it on a slow cooker for 24 hours and got great bone broth. Bone broth is full of collagen, connective tissue, essential amino acids, fats, bone marrow. It's a wonderful thing. Humans were consuming the marrow in the bones, something again that we don't do. So the cod liver we don't do like we used to. The bone broth, we're not big on consuming those things. So I'm basically just returning to what humans were doing previously, in my opinion. There's Weston Price. He went around all of the world, the Gaelics, Eskimo, northern tribes in Africa, just everywhere, okay? And he looked at what their culture was eating. He looked at isolated areas and modernized areas. And we see these isolated areas eating high animal-based nutrition, extremely healthy, no cavities, good bone density, wider palates, all their teeth fit in their mouth. But the minute that white man comes with their fortified food and their flour and whatnot, they get sick. So, and like, you know, if you look at just agriculture, the dawn of the agricultural age, you know, go look at it. I was surprised. We got sicker. We traded nutrient density for calories. So our population exploded because we were able to generate a lot of calories for a greater and greater human population, but the nutrient density wasn't there. The anti-nutrients weren't there, and people got sick. They got shorter. Their lifespan decreased, and they seem to have these isolated areas that Weston Price researched. They seemed to have a immunity to tuberculosis and other diseases that were plaguing the modern world. And so it's not only about teeth and bone density, it's really about some kind of immunity when these people were highly animal based. We got the Maasai, we got the Maori, we got people like the Maasai that were living primarily off blood, milk, and the meat. Most cultures lived off 3 or 4 different things, sometimes 1 or 2 things, like the Eskimos, you know, eating the seals and catching fish and the bison or buffalo or whatever that's up there. we're consuming this. So we have to stop worshiping scientism. We have to also understand the limitations of nutritional so-called science that's based on food surveys. Let's look at the scientific method that is not just observation. There's observation, form a question, do as controlled as possible to isolate variables so that you can really test a control and specifically one variable, and then after you're supposed to be able to reproduce it. Like, there's a whole scientific method that nutritional science really doesn't use. We can't put somebody in a metabolic ward, thousands of people, pay them for that year, and make sure that they're not eating other foods and that they're being compliant. It's super expensive. So we do look at Weston Price, however, and Weston Price has all of this research, which literally compares modern to isolated. That is, in a way, a control group. If he's able to show that we were eating animal sources of nutrition and we weren't getting sick, and then when modern people arrive with plant-based stuff, with other modern processed foods, they get sick. It's not brain surgery. Okay, that is science. Okay, it doesn't make any sense geographically, doesn't make any sense before transportation. This plant-based agenda. They're going to go after mock meats. They're going to go after more replacement fats. They're going to use the DNA of animals to grow lab meat, not the animal, but to grow the tissue in certain mediums to grow. We feed that tissue. We just feed it to the people. And again, people are really excited about that. I think that's ridiculous because the animals are nutritious because the plants have gotten the nutrients from the soil, because the animal has eaten the cellulose, because the bacteria inside these animals are what are actually eating and producing the fats and the nutrients and the vitamins and whatnot. So putting inside a lab to grow a complete protein source, there's not going to be the nutrients in there because the thing wasn't alive and eating and living a life. So it's going to just be more omega-6 fats and more fortified ingredients. So that's the end of my video. Know about the seed oils, correct your omega-6 to 3 with an avoidance of the omega-6 processed foods, with a going after the animal sources of nutrition that are rich in omega-3, and to understand that animal source of nutrition, the animal fat, is not only that there's nothing wrong, it's essential. It's what makes us thrive. Okay, I've been nearing 4 years now. Fiber is not necessary. If we look at the digestive tract, and it is a absorption to absorb nutrients, what creates absorption is fat. Every layer of a cell, all the membranes have a fat layer. It's involved in absorption and permeability. There's nothing better to nourish your digestive tract with animal fats, and to understand that we need the saturated fat. We need the fats to absorb all those fat-soluble nutrients. Therefore, fat phobia is just another way of making sure that you're nutrient deficient in essential fat-soluble vitamins. That's it, guys. Thanks.